Congress and all kind of crazy stuff. And for them to have existed, I think this long is probably running a marathon in Hollywood, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
running, they're running a good race because for the most part they end pretty quickly. They almost end before they begin. But you know, when you look at this chart here, she's Scorpio ascendant. Now, I'm not saying Scorpios are secretive, quote unquote. In fact, they really have a dual sided aspect to them with regards to information. They're not as secretive as you might think, right? But the one thing that I know why she would reveal this, just to kind of bring her chart to light, to kind of fold her into this whole equation of what has happened, right? Look at her ascendant Lord, right? It's Mars.
Right.
Right? And isn't it interesting that it's in the third house of talk,
Right.
right? And Mars's color is red, right?
And folks, this is the third house. This is Mars right here. This, this symbol right here.
It's raw, it's red, and it's in the house of talk,
Oh, okay. Yeah, 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 yeah.
right?
Interesting selection of hers, right? Red table
For
talk.
red table talk, right? I'm just like really like okay, right? Not only that, right? It's exalted, not by
Yep.
degree, but by placement, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's close to exalt. It's not close to exaltation, but it is in the sign of exaltation. It is exalted, quote unquote, right? Um, and then on top of that, it's with Rahu. So her ascendant Lord itself, right, being in that house of expression and then need to get it out and then need to say something, right?
It's all on her. I mean, it's
Yeah,
all on her, all over her chart. I mean, like
yeah.
exalted Mars, Scorpio ascended, Moon and Leo. She's just hot, and when she start talking, jeez, jeez,
Mhm. Yeah. Rahu's gonna inflate that, right? It's gonna blow it up or blow it out of proportion,
right.
right? So she's gonna say something. She's gonna have something to say, whether it be public or private.
And look, she just not just, but 2 years ago, she's only been in that Jupiter Dasha 2 years ago. Prior to that, prior to 2020, that was all Rahu for 18 years.
And that's when Red Table Talk happened,
Right.
right? Rahu is when it happened, right? And Rahu takes on that energy of a planet that's conjunct by far,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's going to do that. And isn't it interesting that what Rahu would reveal is the planet that it and the planet that it rules is in the what house? The house of marriage.
Yeah, seventh house. Saturn's right here, folks. Seventh house.
So Rahu's Lord, the karmic dispensation planet, is in the house of relationships. And so she's going to definitely air out or talk about or exacerbate whatever issues are going on in her marriage. This is her first marriage. I mean, considering, right? That's interesting. So we can understand why Jada would present something of such a nature, right? Now she might be looking in hindsight. I believe she's looking back and saying, you know what? Maybe I did go too far. Rahu doesn't give you any boundaries, it crosses all boundaries, right?
Right.
You know, if K2 is headless, right? Rahu is just nothing but a talking head, right? It's nothing but head energy, right? So it's just
Right.
going to display that characteristic of courageousness, conversations, talking about those indiscretions that I had a entanglement. And here's the thing about it: Rahu would make entanglements. Makes perfect sense.
Snake wrap all around.
I'm just saying, right?
Right.
I mean, K2 is in Ashlesha, right? It's in Ashlesha. So being headless about those entanglements, right? She told it. She's gonna tell it, and she's not gonna back down from it. Scorpions are also warriors in a sense that they have a secret weapon, right?
Right.
And that secret weapon can be for a woman her tongue, right? Look at Mercury, right? It's in Leo. So she can be bodacious, proud, arrogant to a degree, right? Beautiful actress. And Moon in Purva Falguni, right, in the 10th house would definitely give her those acting skills, right? So she definitely has that part, bar none, right? She's got that locked. But
Right.
for the most part, right? I mean, a woman's moon in Purva Falguni is a harsh nakshatra. It can be brutal. This you would think that it's kind of nice. It can be brutal, right?
Yeah, a lot of women that yeah. A lot of women I meet with that nakshatra as a moon.
It can be brutal,
Yeah.
right? They're very good lovers, protectors of family. They love family, all those things, but play with them and see if you don't get bit because I mean, it is a lioness. Don't forget, it is a softer side of the lion, but it is a lioness. So it this fits her so well. It's interesting just to have her chart up to be able to review it. But not only that, she's in a Jupiter Dasha now, right? And when you understand how things work, right? This dasha that she's in is a revelatory dasha. Jupiter kind of turns the light switch on for you. So she's only
Mm-hmm.
been in it a good year, maybe 2 years now, going on to exactly 2 years, right?
Right.
So the light switch is kind of coming on. So the light switch being turned on, but at the same time, isn't it interesting how the light switch turns on, but then this physical condition develops alopecia, and that alopecia is from her transits. That is why it's developed, right? K2 is still in the ascendant. I know some people would argue and say it's not in Scorpio anymore if you're using the true node, but the ancients used mean node, and I stick with the ancients. Sorry, old school, just rolls like that, right? But I stick with the ancients, and the ancients use the mean node. So right now, Rahu and Ketu are still in the respective signs of Taurus and Scorpio,
Right.
right? So Ketu rolling over the first house, which is the what?
Head.
The head. And remember, alopecia is not something that happens overnight. You don't wake up bald headed, right? You wake up and it's gradual. You might lose, some of your eyebrow or, some of your, portions of your other parts for your hair. So it's an accumulative process. And I'm pretty sure she began to notice it last year, probably towards the beginning of last year when K2 was making its movement over her ascendant degree. So
Right.
now K2, since it's leaving, it's done its damage, it's done its work, and it's now changing her appearance, right? Remember, she's now head, and I'm not making any jokes because I don't want to make anyone think that I'm, downing someone's physical condition, not by any means, but I'm saying K2 makes you headless or hairless,
Right.
right? It takes away something, right? And the marker of many times, not always, because you have African women that can rock a bald head and look just as good as someone with shoulder length hair. That's not what I'm saying, but for many women, many times the hair is the hallmark or trait of their beauty or the essence of their ability to become or to feel attractive. And this is something new for her, so she is feeling you know kind of out of sorts. But the thing is that irony always has a way to play itself out. You put yourself on display. You're on these red table talks, and you're living the life of, the wife of a multi-million dollar movie star. I mean, considering the comparison between them and those two, Will is the man, right? She not to say she hasn't had her roles. She definitely has, but when it comes to box office hits, Will Smith
Yeah.
by far, right, is the breadwinner. So, it's just ironic to me that we see someone that has always been very attractive, always beautiful. Jada Pinkett was, you know, seriously the apple of many guys' eye when I was coming up. Especially when she was in Menace to Society and a few other movies, especially when she was on Different World. right?
Different. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, she's always been a cutie, but she's definitely. I think she's done some things to her face, her body, just from the perspective of plastic surgery. But
Mm,
nonetheless, at this point, her physical appearance has permanently changed. And when you see her response and that reaction that she had in that with that comment that Chris Rock made, you could see she definitely was not pleased with the comment. She was like, "Okay, here we go." Right.
right.
Um, so I would understand if I were to project, or not say project, but peer into her feelings at the time. Right. She definitely feels humiliated. Right. And K2 is going to humiliate you, right? In some way. The other odd thing about it is that at the same time, Rahu is in the seventh house, so it also gives you public what? Notoriety.
Notoriety.
So it's a double-edged sword for her. And K2 and Rahu does that pull and push, kind of rips you apart and then puts you back together again type energy. That's what it does when when it's transiting certain accesses. And that axis is the ascendant in the seventh house. And of course, seventh house, Rahu is will, right?
Right.
Looking at Jada Pinkett Smith's age, right, in comparison to um Will. Will is born in 68. She's 71. So it's not the disparaging kind of aspect that you would think with Saturn in the seventh house. I would think she would have someone that's a lot older, right? But Will kind of carries himself like an OG. You know what I mean? He's not, he's definitely been around the block a few times in the sense of his relationships and things of that nature. So he's not a new guy in that consideration. But um, Saturn in seventh house is kind of challenging for relationships to a degree, right? Um,
Right.
it has Jupiter as an aspect, so by aspect, so it does lighten the load, so it can at least last. You know, so I mean,
Makes it dutiful. It
it
makes
does.
it makes it about the business of it. You know.
Yeah, you're not gonna just once you get married, and it's in a fairly healthy sign. It's in a Venus ruled sign, so it's not that damaged in the sense of its placement. But Saturn in the seventh house is pressure in relationships. And a lot of times the person can add that pressure because remember, her ascendant Lord is in Capricorn and Saturn does rule Capricorn, right?
Right.
So it's her kind of also adding fuel to the fire as far as that distancing. And they have been distant quite a while in their relationship, right? They haven't been like, they've been close to some degree, but there's also been some distance, some separation. And you can see that with Saturn in the seventh house many times. But the other thing is that her seventh of Lord is debilitated, right?
Right.
And it is
It.
combust,
Yeah.
right? It's burnt, it's
Yeah, and it's
singed.
not canceled either.
Oh no, she
Mm,
has no cancellations.
yep, that's a
Uh-uh.
real live. Yeah.
That's a real live debilitation.
And
So,
for y'all,
well,
for
actually,
some
she
of y'all who
does.
don't.
Yes, she does. Yes, she does. If you look in the D9,
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
yeah,
Let
the
me.
D9 cancels it, but it's in the sixth house cancellation too, which is a ouch. It's a
Okay, yeah.
bittersweet cancellation.
So it's exalted in the D9. So for those of you who don't know, Venus is debilitated in the sign of Virgo, and it's exalted in the sign of Pisces. So that's what he's talking about here in the D9, which is a divisional chart. We got to do a show on the Navamsha or
Yeah, we
whatnot.
will
We
be
haven't.
doing that this season for sure.
Right, but this little chart right over here is a different kind of play on life, a different phase, different application type of chart or whatever. But this planet gets exalted here, so it helps to cancel the debilitation that we see in her birth chart or
Yeah,
whatnot.
definitely. Definitely. Yeah. One of the good students here asked, seventh house has directional strength. Yes, it does. But strength doesn't mean good, right? Strength means strength, right? And it's strong, right? Its placement is fairly well because it's in a sign that does give it some lessening of the load. Being in a Venus ruled sign for Saturn is a sweet spot, right? It's kind of like, okay, I'm in a place where at least I can, the energy here is not so harsh. But guess what? If you look back to that D9 again, right?
Debilitated.
Debilitated, right? So for all intents and purposes, right,
In the seventh house.
in the house of marriage, right? Long-term commitments, promises, and how the person looks upon their connection to the other person from from a divine perspective, right? So, it's a struggle for her, right? This is a
Mm-hmm.
relationship has been a lesson for her, and as this dasha progresses, right? I would imagine that it's going to be a seesaw effect. They might be the type where they separate but stay married, right? That's a very strong possibility with Saturn in the seventh, with Jupiter in direct opposition, right? And Jupiter is a fairly uh, it's an interesting planet for Scorpio ascendant, right? It rules the second and the fifth house. So guess why they would stay married, or at least stay in the marriage? Children. Right? She would, at least her herself, she would stay for children because that fifth lord, right, is
Right.
prominent, and the fifth house is stronger. Well, is about the same as the second house in the sense of the strength, but for the most part, it would be because she loves her children. She loves her children, right? Because Jupiter's in the ascendant, and that's fifth lord in the ascendant, and also loves her family too. So that's definitely personal for her, and it's very she takes it on as part of her image. But Saturn, which is patience, endurance, painstaking processes, right? Being able to be mature. That wasn't very mature for her to be on the red table talk, divulging their entire entanglements, right? And I'm sure, Will has probably done his fair share as well. And we'll look at his chart very shortly, just a second. But just to kind of give you the backdrop of this whole event, right, that has taken place. And we and I, me and my co-host here, we definitely been talking about it because it's interesting to see, right? It's an
Right.
interesting topic. It's an interesting kind of event. But nonetheless, besides the event, you can see this kind of strain and stress inside of their connection and inside of their marriage. And this is from her perspective as well. So you also have to understand it from her as a woman's point of view. But if we look at Will's chart, right?